Buenos días. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to Cafecito con AAPI. My name is Patricia Mota, and I'm currently serving as President and CEO for the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement. I hope you are well, staying positive and focusing on what you can control. I'm excited for today's Cafecito con AAPI. And we're just before we get started, I want to make a quick announcement that if you are on the job market looking for your next career in transition, please join us for the free virtual career fair on May 20th. You can go to the aseonline.org website and get registered for free. And I'm happy to have with us today Sue Ann Hong, who is the president and CEO for the Center for Asian Pacific American Women, or as it's called, CAPAW? Is that right? So, how are you today?
You got it.
All right. Buenos dias. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me, Patricia.
I'm excited to have you and having gotten to know you earlier this year and connect on also a special month that we're all celebrating as well. But before we get started, Sue Ann, please tell us, how do you prefer your cafecito?
Well, first of all, I have my cafecito right here, and
Salud.
I actually use my Keurig every morning. And today I have Seattle's Best with a little bit of cream and a packet of Truvia.
Nice. And can you tell us and share with everybody tuning in, please have your questions, your comments, please share this cast that's going out on our LinkedIn, our Facebook, our YouTube channels, to get to know who Sue Ann is. So can you share with us your professional background, your personal background with our audience tuning in today?
Absolutely. But before we start, I have to share with the audience the fact that Patricia was recognized as a Shiro at our Multicultural Women's Conference, everyone. Very first one we had. So I just want to give a shout out to her and the work that you guys are doing.
You.
So from a perspective, first of all, I'm an immigrant from South Korea. I came when I was 8 years old from Seoul, Korea to the United States, and I flew by myself. And so my journey has always been this kind of, let's try something new. So it's ironic because I stayed in one company for 28 years, but within that 28 years, I tried a lot of different things and a lot of different career paths. And I think that really helped. But, the significant part of my career, when I first started, I didn't know I could be in leadership, but I think that was one of the biggest probably ahas that I had at the very beginning of my career, is this whole notion that I could actually be a leader, be in management, because I really didn't know I could do that. But, I was in the auto claims business for a long time. But, at the end of the day, it's, I worked for a Fortune 50 company at State Farm, who's been a very, very good employer for me. And then, within that, I've had probably 5 different jobs within State Farm. We can talk more about that. And then, 3 years ago, I decided, I really took an evaluation as they were going through a reorganization on the auto claims leadership side. And I decided that, this is a good time to try something new. And so I went to nonprofit. And so we'll talk about that journey a little bit, but let's put it to you this way. It wasn't something that I planned.
Well, and thank you for sharing that, because, we have folks from, young professionals that are getting started to those that are further along in their careers. I always think it's critical that we share our stories and our career trajectories, just to be able to reflect that it's not always what we plan, but to being open to opportunities, especially leadership opportunities, when we need, and it's such a critical time that we need more diverse representation, right, in leadership roles across the country. So thank you for sharing that. And also thank you for recognizing me and many women across the country this year through the Shiro's Award. I think it, for me, was a perfect example of the theme that we have this year. The theme that we're leading with at ASE, that we showcased at our summit a couple of weeks ago, is we lead at the intersection of identity, equity, unity. Identity being that we each have an intersectional identity, being that we're also part of other groups, right? Whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's certain hobbies, whether it's we identify as a parent, a sibling, and why it's critical that we embrace those identities in order to be our true authentic selves in the workplace, right? And the equity piece around meeting where individuals where they are, ensuring that there's processes, structures at these companies, organizations employers that we work with to ensure that there's a fair process for all. But the unity piece being around allyship, right? How are we supporting one another across communities, ensuring that we are moving the needle together towards more inclusive society and workspaces? So what you led with other leaders and other organizations, and I have to put a shout out to Veronica Maldonado Torres also, who did nominate me for that. Who's one of our program leads for our women's leadership program, Mujeres de Asset as well. So all that being said, Sue-Ann, what comes to your mind when you hear this particular theme and the efforts that you're leading?
So when I think about identity, this is a big issue from my perspective and very important conversation, because especially in the last year with the whole anti-Asian sentiment, Black Lives Matter, I think, this whole notion that we're perpetual foreigners in the United States, even if you've lived here all your life, or even if you were born here, if you don't look like Caucasian, if you don't have a Caucasian skin, then somehow you don't belong in this country. And so one of the things that I learned throughout my career journey is that I did, in parts of my career, really assimilate to the point where I think I lost my identity of who I was for a while. Because I felt in order to succeed, I had to put that aside as a Korean American woman and to be able to act like the majority, however the executives acted or whatnot. And that was partly on me, but what I realized was that I had to actually go into who I was deeper. And when things got stormy and when things didn't go well, or if I was unsure about certain things, I had to go back to my roots and really dig my heels and get my power from that identity, right? And yes, I am also American, so I am all of those things. So I think that identity, from my perspective, is being rooted in who I am, but I can pivot and do things that I need to do as a leader, but still never forget where I came from. So I see that as more identity, and whatever that is for each person, I think it's unique.
Yeah. No, I see so much, right, alignment when we're talking to folks, let's say in our leadership programs, that say that same story that you just shared is I've assimilated and I want to be my true self in the workplace. But when you look at, let's say, a traditional corporate culture, and in this case, right, when we're talking about traditional Latino values, there's some key clashes, whether it's being coming from more of a modest culture, which I'm sure versus tooting your own horn. That's kind of tough, right? If you're more comfortable with that humility piece and not as comfortable sharing your accomplishments, it takes so you don't want to toot your own horn that it comes out inauthentic, right? But you want to get comfortable so that you do showcase your abilities. And so I think that's so critical. And those of you tuning in, share your stories. We want to hear your comments, your questions. We'll have some time to address a few. Thank you for sharing. Feeling like even if born here, has always felt like I put myself in a box and not to assert myself. Thank you for sharing, whoever that is. I think it's critical that not only, to your point, Sue-Ann, that some of it's partly on you, but it's also partly on the organization to create the spaces to embrace differences, embrace authentic cultural backgrounds as well. So, Sue-Ann, this month we're talking about Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Can you create awareness, share those of tuning in terms of why is this month so critical? Is there anything specific that your organization has planned? And what can an organization like ASA and our network do in this time to practice allyship?
So thank you for asking that. This is an important month because, number one, I feel like, and this may be true of other cultures, other people of color, right, where I don't feel like our history is told, whether it's in schools, whether it's in communities. And this is an opportunity to share our story and our history as well. And so as an example, when I think about women, 1875, I don't think people know about the Page Act, where Chinese women were actually looked upon as dirty, and actually they were like they were looked upon as diseased. And so when they were trying to come into this country, they were subject to very, horrific like medical exams and invasive things that we would never put women through. But that, when I think about the whole sexism, racism, it stems way back into history. So I think understanding the history helps to understand where we are today and how we got here, and then what do we need to do to move forward. And so number one, I would say, would be education and just being aware of some of the key things that happened, Japanese internment camp, what happened in the World War II, and what happened with, the whole Chinese Exclusion Act, where citizenship was denied. So those are key things I think is important. Number two is that, there's the whole model minority myth, and the fact that, this concept of where keep your head down, work hard, and all of those things that are stereotypical of it, and they, keep quiet, and and you just work hard and you'll get promoted. Well, that doesn't work. Okay, that does not work, everyone. So I think the key thing is to understand what that is, and then how do we work through that despite the stereotypes, and just, I think, creating understanding. And then your other question around how can we create allyship? You just gave me an idea as we were talking. I have a new program coming that I'm creating. It's going to be a multicultural women's leadership forum, and it's going to be Asian, Black, Hispanic, and Native American women. I'm going to bring 20 women in, and the focus is going to be year 1 to 5 in the workforce. That's the broken rung. That's where, women have the most difficult time getting ahead. So we want to bring some programming in that space, and I'm doing a test program. So you can help me by finding women for me. I'm saying
this right now. We're committed to support you with that.
Okay.
And we are going to commit. I think, that's so critical in building allyship and coming across communities to be able to do that. So that's excellent. You talked about educating. I think that's always a key thing is whether it's reading an article, picking up a book, or asking questions, right? I think, I hope that this forum, this conversation for all of us tuning in, is creating a new awareness and some of the things that you shared, right? Like what you started off at the very beginning regarding how Chinese American women were looked upon. Like I had no idea, right? And so thank you for sharing that with thinking out loud in terms of allyship, is we need to do more of this across our organizations, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. We'll be able to get a question or two if any of those of you tuning in. Julie Villegas is asking, who helped you figure out your identity, and at what point in your career did this occur? That's an excellent question.
That is a great question, Julie. Thank you for asking. When I was a second line leader, so probably I was halfway into my career, I start, let's face it, our parents, our Asian parents, and mine included, they're all about that vertical mobility, right? What is your job title? How, are you secure in your job? How much do you make? And then can I brag on my kid? There's a little bit of that going on there, but I started to figure it out, that second level leader. And then I had a chance to actually go to a Asian Pacific American Women's Leadership Institute, where for the first time I had a round table of Asian women. I had never had that before. There were 14 Asian women from all different aspects of, life, career, different parts of their career. But I had never been with this many Asian women before. I had always been in different places that were, I was kind of the only. That was the first time, I would say, that identity, it made me force myself to look at my identity and what I was about. And we all did that. And we were in all different maturity levels, if you want to call it that, and how well we knew ourselves and our identity. And then I started asking some questions, even to my mom and our family history. And so that started the journey. And then I think when we went through the claims reorganization for leadership, I have to be honest, the job offer that I got, it was one level below what I was doing for 9.5 years. And that was a gut punch for me. And so, I had to make a decision between, do I take that job or do I do something else? And because they're going to support me to do something else if I want to do that. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I said, I'm going to do something else because I think I can contribute more, but I don't know what that is. And so 2 days later, I got a call from a friend of mine who's on the board of 2 nonprofits. One of them was CAPAW. They said 2 days ago, our executive director resigned. Can you would you be willing to step in as interim executive director? I'm like, are you serious? Have you thought about nonprofit? I'm like, no, not really. And so that started the journey. So a week later, I said yes. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to run a nonprofit. And of course, start all over. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. And so I had to start all over and kind of function like an entrepreneur because I'd never, where is my L&D department? That would be me.
So you remind me when I became interim CEO of AAPI, October 2014, I was like, okay. And then when it became formal, it got a little, scary. It's like, figuring things out. You are functioning as an entrepreneur. But not being afraid, I think that my biggest asset was the network of folks that were willing to help me out, right? And to ask questions, to bring that support. That is just an amazing story. And the other thing that I think resonates with a lot of folks in our community was like working hard and expecting that next promotion and that next opportunity. And it doesn't necessarily happen that way, right? So it's a excellent point. We have another comment. In school and most of my career experience, I felt like I needed to choose between my race and ethnicity. As I got older and less tolerant of the nonsense, I've grown to be proud of my multidimensional identity. Now being first generation Afro-Latino is a badge of honor to me. Thank you so much for sharing. I think it is critical that we are proud of our heritage, our background. And we're getting great comments. Sue would be honored to be part of the group. What you talked about, thank you, Patricia Hereda Morris. Look, we're getting some folks already interested.
Well, collect the names for me. Collect the names for me and let's connect.
So, and your story about connecting with other women, similar background as you, is critical. Because, we've done that with our Mujeres de AAPI program, our women's leadership program. We hear the same thing for Latinas. They're like, I've never seen so many other Latina professionals around me. And that is so empowering. And I think we cannot, discount the power behind that, right? And what that stands for. So, Sue-Ann, we have a few minutes left. I have to ask you, what are you most hopeful for this year?
Well, I'm very hopeful for the fact that even with the pandemic, even with everything going on with the racism and all of the issues with jobs, especially impacting women of color, I am very hopeful because we are strong. We're courageous and we will band together. And that's one of my things, when we talk about what unity looks like, is that we will band together, and it's beyond allyship. It's about action.
Yes.
And I think, this is a good example of bringing coalitions together like this. The goal is to be powerful, to amplify out, right? What we need to do to help with the equity piece ultimately. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, we've got to also help ourselves too. And we're going to have to do that banding together. So I'm very hopeful because of women like you who are out fighting the good fight, and we're going to do it together.
We are going to do it together. Sue-Ann, thank you so much for taking time out. I know you just jumped out of flight this morning and still agreed to join us. And hey, make sure you practice self-care because I know it's a busy month for you, and we look forward to supporting you, watching you. Follow Sue-Ann on LinkedIn. I know she's active on there as well. And follow CAPAW as well. Thank you to you and your community for joining, and we look forward to supporting you in partnership for this year and for many years to come. All of those of you tuning in, please share, like, comment, and until the next time, hasta la próxima. Take care.
Bye.